This 11th hour IMF standby agreement is basically a stopgap agreement. It's a short-term deal. It's band-aid. It gives Pakistan much-needed funds to avert a default in the first instance. But that doesn't mean that it addresses Pakistan's problems, which are structural. Yes, the government did take a number of measures, and they were not easy to take for any political government. But Pakistan needs to do much more. And whatever government is formed after the election, because we'll soon be in election season, will have to come up with an economic plan which gets Pakistan back on a growth path. Because if Pakistan doesn't get back on a growth path, then it is unable really to escape from this crisis. Well, I think to attract FDI, foreign direct investment, first of all, Pakistan has to establish political stability, political certainty, and of course also certainty of economic policy. And we need an assurance by our political leaders that they will not change the rules of the game. There's nothing worse to scare investors away from the country than changing the rules of the game very often. So what Pakistan needs to put in place is, yes, a level playing field for investors, and of course provide the kind of certainty that comes from policy continuity, as well as the fact that investors at least know whether a political government is going to survive for 5 years or not survive for 5 years. So I think, many of the prerequisites for an economic revival are actually not even economic. They're political. So political certainty, policy certainty, as well as, I think, a credible leadership. There is no country in the world which faced an economic crisis and was able to bounce back more resilient, and it didn't have a strong, credible government which believed in structural reform and which also had an able team to assist it. So the question of leadership is key for economic revival. I think we have to look at what are the roots of Pakistan's crisis, the economic crisis, the most severe crisis it has faced in many decades. And the roots lie in a governance crisis, which in turn then creates a fiscal crisis, which means that successive governments have simply lived beyond their means. They've not been able to match expenditure by raising taxes, raising revenue. So what is needed now for Pakistan to move forward is a comprehensive plan to address structural issues and really find a path to economic growth, and which should be sustainable, so that the vicious cycle of high budget balance of payments deficits, rising debt, and chronic foreign exchange crisis, which have led to so many IMF bailouts, somehow that has to be reversed. So unless structural economic issues are tackled, the country will not be able to escape from the trap that it is mired in. And this is a trap of anemic growth, very low growth, low savings and investment, heavy borrowing, increasing indebtedness, and of course soaring inflation, which today are fueling a cost of living crisis for ordinary citizens. Pakistan needs to address the immediate, but also the long term. So both the urgent and important have to be tackled simultaneously. And, I've often talked about ensuring that we have a bargain with the future, which basically means that we have to look at some of the long-term structural problems that we need to address, and that will take time. For example, Pakistan's education deficit. We are second country in the world with the largest number of out-of-school children. We have to address this. Countries don't make economic progress until there is a solid educational base. Today, with 22.8 million school-going children who are not going to school, that is not the basis on which we can predicate economic progress.